I know I've made a big claim in the title that this is probably the most comprehensive time range EA on the internet. Now you will be the judge of that. And maybe it's not, but this is where you guys come in. But let's start by looking at all the features that I've built so far, and then let's make it greater with even more suggestions. So with no further shenanigans, let's start. Now, feature 1. The EA can form a range based on a start time and an end time defined by the user. Feature 2. The user can define what the minimum or the maximum range size can be, so anything outside of that, the range is going to be invalid and the EA is not going to take a trade. Then feature 3, the user can decide to trade either one-sided or both-sided. If you select one-sided, then after the range has developed, the EA is going to place an order at the top of the range and at the bottom of the range, but if one of them is triggered and you have selected one-sided, the other one is going to be deleted. Both-sided will mean that even if the trade has been taken on one side, the order placed on the other side will still stay until the end of the day, and if the price comes back in the other direction and hits that one, that trade will also be taken. Then the fourth feature is you can either trade with the break or opposite to it. So if you select with the break, the EA is going to trade when the breakout happens and take the trade in that direction. But if you select opposite to the break, then the EA is going to place the order opposite to the break, which is if the break is going to happen on this side, the EA is going to place a buy order here and the sell order here, like this. So now if the price comes back to that range level, then we're going to be taking a sell instead of a buy. Now this goes against the trend, but don't worry, we're going to apply a moving average filter and an Ichimoku filter to make sure that we only trade in the direction of the trend. The fifth feature is you can decide whether the lot size is going to be fixed or as a percentage of the capital. If you select fixed, then you're going to have to provide the value. And if you select risk as a percentage of capital, then you have to define what risk on one trade are you willing to take. Then the sixth feature is a simple one, which is defining the stop loss and TP as a percentage of the range. So if the range is 30 pips and you say 100%, that will mean 30 pips TP and 30 pips stop loss. If you say 200% TP, then the TP is going to be double the stop loss. Then the seventh feature is on the stop loss, whether you want to trail it or you don't want to trail it. If you don't want to trail it, then you define what the fixed pips are going to be. But if you choose to trail it, then you have three other options. The first one is as a percentage of the range. So if the range size is 30 pips and you select 80% of the range, then that's going to be 24 pips that the trailing is going to happen on. So here our order is triggered and the trailing stop starts to move by the percentage of the range that we have provided. If you want the trailing to happen by the recent high and low in the market, then the EA is going to trail the stop loss by whatever is the recent low or high in the market, plus a small buffer that the user can define. And here you define the buffer. So if you're defining it to be 2 pips below the low or 2 pips above the high, that's what the EA is going to trail by. So this is the most recent low. So the trailing is going to happen 2 pips below this low. And then you have the option of trailing by fixed pips amounts. So if you say 30 pips is the trailing is going to happen by 30 pips only. Then feature number 8, 9, and 10 are related to filters. The first one is the news filter. So you can define whether you want to filter out a day for a news. And you can define it by giving a keyword from the title of the news, for example, NFP, Joel's non-farm, PMI, etc., against a currency. And you can define more than one currency if you want. As long as there is a combination of the keyword and the currency, the EA can find in the next upcoming whatever number of days you define here, that day the trading is going to be disabled. Then the ninth feature I've added is a moving average filter, and this is to establish that we trade in the direction of the trend. The EA is going to look at whether the fast moving average is above the slow moving average, and if that is the case, it's only going to put a buy stop. This way we ensure that we're only trading in the general direction of the trend and not opposite. And then the 10th feature is an Ichimoku filter. And here, if you turn it true, you have a lot of options to define how to define the trend. So you can define the trend by if the price is above the cloud, the price is above Tenkan-sen line, the price is above Kijun-sen line, Senkou-span A or Senkou-span B. Then you can also have the option of saying, no, only buy when Tenkan-sen is above Kijun-sen, or Tenkan-sen is above Kijun-sen, which are both above the cloud, or Tenkan-sen is above the cloud, or Kijun-sen is above the cloud. Let's first look at price above the cloud. So now, even though we have told the EA to trade on both sides, the EA is going to look whether the price is above the cloud or is it below the cloud. And if it's above the cloud, then it's only going to place a buy order and not the sell order. And if it's below the cloud, then it's only going to place the sell order and not the buy order. And if it is inside the cloud, the price, then nothing is going to happen. The EA is not going to place any trade at all. And this is where the taking of the trade on the opposite side comes into place. So for example, this is the range, but because the price is above the cloud, so we are only interested in taking a buy, but we place the buy at the bottom. So we are trading on the opposite side, but is still trading in the general direction of the trend by only taking a buy. But now we're getting the buy not here, but here, so at a discounted price. You can go price above the cloud, price above Tenkan-sen, Kijun-sen, Senko-span A, Senko-span B. You can also select when Tenko-sen is above Kijun-sen, or Kijun-sen is above cloud, or Tenko-sen is above cloud, and all sorts of combinations which are available. So EA is only going to take the trade in the general direction of the trend based on the parameters that you define on the filter. And then you have the possibility to either trade with the break, so getting a higher price, or wait for the price to come back to the bottom of the range and then take the trade. The downfall of that is that the price might never come back to that level and you miss the trade at all. So these are the features that we currently have in the EA, but I will be looking through the comment section and collecting suggestions. And if I have enough good suggestions, then I will make more videos of how to incorporate those suggestions to make it even tighter. So with no further ado, let's start coding the EA. We go to the coding environment by going to the development environment by clicking this button IDE. And here within this folder YouTube, I'm going to create a new expert advisor and let's call it time range with filters. You hit next, 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 and you end up with the default template. I'll clean it up. And here we are with the clean template, with the three functions, which are the initialization function, the deinitialization function, and the OnTick function. Initialization, as the name goes, when you attach the EA to the chart, all the codes written here are going to be run. Then the deinitialization, all the codes between this and this are going to be run when you deinitialize the EA, so removing the EA from the chart. And the third one is the OnTick function, which is every code written here is going to be run on every new tick arrival into MQL. So let's start coding. And here in the global section, outside all of the functions is the global section, and every variable that we define here is available to all of the functions. If you define a variable within a function, it's only available to that function unless you send the value out to the other function. But the global variables are accessible everywhere. So within the global section, we'll start by creating a reference to the trade.mqh file, which is sitting here in the include folder in trade and trade.mqh. By referencing to this file, now we have access to a lot of trading operations and we don't need to write the codes for them because MQL has already written the codes for them in this file trade.mqh. The ones that we're going to use are three. The first one is the class trade, which we are going to use to do all of the trading operations like buying, selling, opening, closing the trades, or changing the stop loss. The next one is the C position info, which we're going to use to get the information on the positions which are currently open. And then the C order info, which we're going to use to get the information on all of the orders which are currently pending on the server. So all of the buy stops, sell stops, buy limits, and sell limits. I'm assigning these classes to variables trade, position info, and order info. Then because we're using two indicators in this EA, so I need to also reference to the trade indicator file, which is available here, the indicator folder as trend.mqh. And this file contains all of the coding that the MQL has written for all of the trend-based indicators, and Ichimoku and moving averages are two of them. Now I'm using the class C Ichimoku and CIM moving average, and I'm assigning them to variable Ichimoku that I'm going to use for Ichimoku. And then I'm going to need two indicators for moving averages, a fast one and a slow one. So I'm going to change it to fast and slow. Next thing we're going to do is create a lot of enums. As you've seen in the EA, there are a lot of drop-down boxes that we use to ask the user to provide us the input, and those drop-down boxes are created by using enums. The ones I'm going to create, you have already seen them. The first one is the stop loss type, and I'm going to allow the user to pick between fixed and risk percentage. Then what hours to start the trading. So I'm going to need an hours drop-down menu. So I'm creating an _1, _2, _3, and providing them the value all the way until 24. Then we have the minutes, and I'm not going minute by minute. I'm only going by a 5-minute interval. Then the trading sites. So it's either one-sided or both-sided. A stop loss type, where we're going to ask the user the question, do you want to trail? And then the answer is either yes or no. Then in case he selects it to be trailing, then what type of trailing do you want? And we're going to provide the options of whether as a percentage of the range, whether as high or low, or as fixed pips. Then the trading style, do you want to trade with the break or opposite to the break, as we've already seen. And then when it comes to Ichimoku, we're going to provide all of these 9 options to select from, all the way from price above cloud to Kijun-sen above cloud. Now I'm going to scroll down slowly so you can see. So this is the beginning.
and this is the end. And then for the news filter, we're going to create a drop down, which is separator drop down, where we're going to ask the user whether he wants to separate that long string of values that he provides by comma or by semicolon. So these are all the enums we're going to require. And then we start creating the variables. So the first group that I'm going to create is the EA specific variables. So what's the magic number? What's the trade comment if you want to put a comment? And then the trading style, do you want to trade with the break or opposite? And then the trading size, whether you want to trade one-sided or both-sided. Then the next section I'm creating is the range parameters, where I'm going to ask for the start hour, the start minute, the end hour, the end minute for the range itself, and then the closing hour and the closing minute for closing of the trading at the end of the day. Then the maximum and minimum range sizes, out of which the range is not valid anymore. And then if it is valid, then what color for the range? And then if it's disabled, then what color for the range? Then we go to trade management. And the first variable that I'm asking the user to provide input on is the lot size type, whether it's fixed or as a percentage of the capital. If it is fixed, then what's the lot size? And if it's risk percentage, then what percent of the capital do you want to risk on every trade? And what's the time frame that you're going to put the EA on? Let's code it to a default value of M5. Then the order distance point. So once the range has been defined, how far from the range value, top and bottom, do you want the price to be before you place the order? Because you don't want to place the order just 1 pip below the range top. Then the stop loss percent and the TP percent. So if the range is 30 pip, 100% will mean 30 pip TP, 30 pip is stop loss. The next section is the stop loss management. So once the trade has been taken, do you want to trail the stop loss? And if you want to trail the stop loss, then what type of stop loss do you want to trade it by? As a percentage of range, high or low, or fixed pips. If you go for fixed pips, then what are those fixed pips? If it's a percentage of the range, then what percentage of the range do you want to trail? So 100% will mean 30. If the range size is 30, 80% will mean 24, and so on and so forth. And if you select it to be high or low, because these are the three values that we provided to the user as a trail type. And if you say high-low, then the EA needs to know how many bars to use in order to find the high and find the low. You will see it in the coding when we do it. How do we find the high and low? And then if it is the high and low, then do you want to have a bit of a buffer below the low and above the high? Or do you want it to be exactly on the low and high that you trail the stop loss? Then there are some variables where I do not need input from the user, but I need these variables in order to create the EA. And these are start time, end time, and close time in two different date formats. The first one is the MQL date time, and the other one is date time. And these are two different ways of writing the time. So these are same variable, just written in different formats of time. And you will see why we need these two different formats. Then I need some integer variables, and I need some double variables. Double variables are variables where you can store the decimal values. So for example, the range high, the range low, the range size, or the trailing stop loss, that will be in decimals. So we need the values stored in a double variable type. Then the next section we're going to need is for the news filter. And here we start with whether or not the news filter is on, so whether it's applied. Then if it is, then within this line where you're going to give the keywords of the news, do you want to separate it by comma or semicolon? By assigning it to the enum that we created as separator dropdown up here. And comma equals 0 and semicolon equals 1. So here 0 will mean comma. And then the key news and the news currency, because a combination of these two is what we're going to use to find the upcoming news. Then how many days from today to look forward to find the news. Now the filter code is going to stop once we have found the first news event upcoming, but providing it 100-day sort of provides a buffer. And then when the trading is disabled, then I want also the chart color to change. So I want to change it to red, but we're providing this option to the user as an input. Select the color that he wants to see the chart in when the trading is disabled. And then these three variables I'm going to need, but I'm not going to ask for an input from the user. The next section is the moving average filter. We start again by asking whether or not you want to apply the filter. And if you do want to apply the filter, what time frame do you apply the filter? So the EA can run on a 5-minute chart, for example. But for the moving average crossover, you want to see it on a daily chart, on a 4-hour chart, on a higher time frame. So you have the ability to define that. Then what's the value of the slow moving average and the fast moving average? What period? And then what's the mode and the price median? And then I'm going to need these two variables, but I don't need the input from the user, so I'm creating them separately as bool. Bool variables are variables that return the value of yes and no. So they can store those values. You will see during the coding how we use it. And the last section is the Ichimoku, which goes like the moving average. So we start by asking whether or not to apply it. And if to apply it, then what is the type of the filter you want to apply? And now you can select it from IC types, which are all of the drop-down values that we defined here in this enum. So by referencing this variable, Ichi filter type to IC types variable type, now the user will have that drop-down available to him. Then what's the time frame for Ichimoku? Then the values of the Tenkan-sen, Kijun-sen, and Senku span input variables. Now, if you have used the Ichimoku indicator, you know that the default values are 9, 26, and 52, but I'm providing the user the ability to change them if he wants. Then like moving average, I need these two bool variables for the EA, but I don't need input from the user. So this concludes our variables definition section. And now if I compile it and we go back to MetaTrader and we select our EA from the YouTube folder as time range EA with filters, we can see all of these inputs that the user can provide based on what we have created in our EA. With all of the drop downs, say for example here, we can select all of these values. With the variable section completed, now we can continue on the initialization function, and we start by setting the input magic number by using the trade and using the set expert magic number and providing the value of the input magic number that we collect from the user. Then I don't want to see the grids on the chart, so I'm using the chart set integer function and I'm changing the grid show to false. Then we have the Ichimoku filter, and I only want to show the Ichimoku on the chart if the filter is turned on. So on the initialization, I'm saying if the Ichimoku filter is true, then create an Ichimoku variable by creating a new Ichimoku, and then initializing that Ichimoku by saying Ichimoku.create, providing it the symbol value, the time frame value, and the Tenkan-sen, Kijun-sen, and Senku span values from here that the user has defined. Now I'm doing it as if the value is true, because I only want to show this indicator if the user has selected it. Then the same thing we do for moving average filter. So in case if the user has selected it, so the moving average filter on is true, then only we want to show it on the chart. And then we create these slow and fast moving average variables, and we initialize them by saying create and providing the symbol, the moving average time frame, the value of the period, the mode, and the applied price to the function. This concludes our initialization function. On deinitialization, we don't need anything. And on tick function, we're going to do that at the end once we have written all of the functions that we require. So now I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to create some space. And here I'm going to start writing the functions which are standard functions that I use almost in every year. And you've seen that already in the scalping year as well. So if you followed that series, you already know what these standard functions are. The first function that we're going to create is the isNewBar function, which checks whether or not there is a new candle on the chart. Now I will link a video up here, which goes a bit more into details of how this function works. You can go check it out. But very shortly, we start with a date time variable of previous time as 0. Then we check the current time by checking the time of the open of the current candle. And then we compare these two times. And if these two times are different, then we know it's a new candle. So we return true. But before we return the value true, we store the value of the current time, which is the opening time of the current candle, back into the previous time variable that we have created here as a static variable. So this variable will store the value and not lose it. So the next time when the EA comes back here, then on the same candle, the current time of the opening of that candle will still be the same as the previous time, so it will return false. The next function is the calculate lot size function, and this is a double function, so it will return the value of the lot size calculated. We start by creating a risk variable, and that risk variable is going to be the account balance times whatever is the risk percentage that the user has selected divided by 100. So we're converting the risk percentage from percentage to an actual dollar value. Then we get the value of the tick size, the tick value, and the lot size by using these functions, which are generic in MQL. And then we create a variable and we divide the SL points by the tick size, tick value, and lot steps. And that should give us the money per lot step. So how much money every lot step is worth. And then we can calculate the lots by dividing the risk by money per lot step and multiplying it by lot steps to get the value of what the lot size should be. And then these three variables are variables to check basically minimum volume, maximum volume, and the volume limit on the server. So minimum volume is what your broker allows as the minimum volume, maximum volume what your broker allows as the maximum volume. So we can check it here as well, that if the maximum value is not equal to 0, so broker has a maximum value, and then we calculate our lot size, then we need to return the value of whatever is the smaller of the two. So for example, if our lot size was 30, calculated here, but the max volume that's allowed on the broker is 20, then we send the math minimum, so the lower of these two amounts, the 30 and the 20. So the return value of the lot size is going to be 20 in that case. Same goes for minimum. Let's say if our lot size comes out of this calculation as 0.001, but the minimum value allowed on the broker is 0.01, then select the math max, which is the higher of the two values. Then we normalize it, and then we return the lots. Now I have another video here, which you can go check out to have more understanding and details of how this function works. Then the next function we're going to create is check for open orders and open positions. And again, I have a video on this in the channel, which you can go check out in order to understand it better. But very quickly, we run through all of the orders total. And then we select it by index, whatever is the index here. And then we check whether it's a buy stop, sell stop, buy limit, or sell limit. And then if the order symbol value equals to the symbol value of the chart and the order magic number equals to the input magic number that we have, then it's our order. So we increase the buy total, the variable that we have created here, buy total and sell total. We increase the value of that by 1 by saying buy total plus plus or sell total plus plus. Now in case of sell stop and sell limit, we increase the value of the sell total by 1. In case of buy stop or buy limit, we increase the value of the buy total by 1. Then we do the same for the positions. So we loop through the positions total, and then we select it by index, and then we check whether it's a position type buy or sell. And if it is against the current symbol and our input magic number, in which case we know that it is related to the current chart and it is our EF which has placed this position. In that case also, we increase the buy total and sell total by 1. And we do all of this because if there is already an order on the server, or if there is already an open position, then I do not want to create another position or another order. Let's compile it, and we don't have any errors so far. Then the next function I'm going to create is to find highs, because if the user selects as a trailing stop the possibility to trail it by high or low, then we need to find that high. I will create a video in more details and link it up here, so you can go check that out once it's available. But very quickly, we start with the highest higher value of 0. Then we loop through starting at 0, which will be the current candle, and going back 200 candles. And then on every iteration, getting the value of that candle's high. And then we check that starting at that candle, so let's say if that candle is candle number 10, starting at that candle minus 5, meaning 5 bars to the right. So starting 5 bars to the right of our candle and looking at a range of 11 candles, because if bars n is 5, then 5 times 2 plus 1 is 11. So starting at 5 bars to the right of our candle and then a range of 11 candles. So our candle is right in the middle as a 6th candle. We check what is the highest point. And if that highest point turns out to be equal to our candle, which is I, then we know that our candle is sitting right in the middle of 5 candles on the right and 5 candles on the left. And this is why it is a valid high. And then we store the value into the high, or in fact, we already got the value into the high, so we return that high back. And in case if the system cannot find in 200 iterations any candle which meets our criteria of 5 candles on the right and 5 candles on the left as lower, then it just returns a -1, which is going to be an error. Then we do the same to find the lows, but in reverse. So we start with the maximum value allowed within MQL as a low price. And then we loop again, starting at the current candle, going back 200 candles. And then we're going to check starting 5 bars to the right of that candle, 11 candle range, and see if the lowest of that candle matches our candle. And if it does, then we know it's a valid low. And in that case, we return the low. Otherwise, we return a -1, which is error. If I compile, everything seems fine so far. Now that we have our standard functions, now we can go back up to where we created the space and start writing the code specific to this year. So the first one I'm going to do is I'm going to create a convert times function. I will start by storing the value of the current time. So whatever is the time now into the start time variable, which is an MQL date time variable. These two date time formats are slightly different from each other. The date time format is the default format, which just has the date completely like, okay, well, date, month, year, hour, minute, and seconds. The MQL date time format breaks it down into different parts, and you will see very soon. So what I'm going to start with, I'll take the current time and store it into the MQL date time format variable, which is the start time. And once I do that, now I have the possibility to, by hitting this, now I can divide the time into day, hour, minute, seconds, year, whichever way I want. So now this is start time MQL date time variable is going to have the current time broken down. And then whatever is the day and the hour and minutes is stored into this variable. Now I can change it. So now I change it by saying start time hour is equal to whatever is the start range hour, what our user has provided as the time that the range is going to start. And the start time minute is going to be the range start minute. So thereby we have the entire thing as the hour and the minute is stored into this start time now. We started with current time, but we changed the hour and minute. And now I can reformat it into the format of the date time by going structure to time and taking this variable start time and converting it into the time start. So even though time start was blank in the beginning, we used the current time to start the entire thing. We changed the hour and minute. And now that we store back it into the time start, now the time start will have the values of the start of the range time, but in a date time format. We do exactly the same thing with end time. And then we do exactly the same thing with the close time. So now we have the time of the start of the range, the time of the end of the range, and the time of the close of the range defined in the date time format that MQL can use very easily. And then one more thing that I'm going to do here is that this variable that we created up into the global section, so it has a 0 value. I'm going to check if it is 0 and the time current, meaning the time on the server currently, is bigger than the start time, meaning whenever is the start of the range. If it is bigger than that and this value is 0, then we set a value into the bar's range start by getting the value of the bar when this time became bigger. So for example, if the user has set 6 o'clock in the morning, the range is going to start. The moment that the time becomes bigger than that, so at 6 hours, 0 minute, 1 second, because it has become bigger than the time start value, we get the value of that bar number and store it into this variable. So now we have the bar number of when the range is starting. Now that we have the value of the start and the end of the range, we can get the value of the range. And we start by creating these two variables, high and highest bar, setting them both to 0 at the start. And then we go, what's the bars now? And that we get by using the iBar function, providing the input time frame and the symbol. And then we say if the time, current time, is bigger than the start time that we have found here, time start, and the time current is less than the time end, so end of the range. So if it is in between the beginning and the end of the range as defined by the user, then we can calculate how many bars to count by saying, well, whatever is the current bars, the bars now, I'm providing the formula here, but you can also write bars now, and the bars start of the range, because we have already calculated here when does the range start in terms of the number of bars. Now we get the current bars and we say, okay, one minus the other, we get the bars to count. So we know what's the bar number at the beginning of the range and what's the bar number at the end of the range. So we know the range of the bars that we have stored here. So now we can find what's the highest bar within that range by using the iHighest function, looking for high mode and providing the range of bars to count, starting at 0, starting at the current candle. And whatever is that bar number, get the high of that bar by using the iHigh function. And if the high is not equal to the range high, so whatever is the range high from the previous time that this function was run, if it is different than that, then return the value of that high back. So this is how we get the high value of the range, and it's dynamic. So on every next candle, as long as we are still within the range, the value is going to be updated. Then we do the same thing to get the low, which is we start with these two variables of low and lowest bar. Then we say if the time current is between the start time and the end time of the range, so we're in the range, get the bars to count, so get the range of how many bars are there in the range by using the I bars of now, the current candle, minus when the range is started, which we calculated here, plus 1. And then from that range, find the lowest bar by using the I lowest, providing the low mode and providing the range that we have calculated here. Once we have what's the number of that bar or how many bars to go back, then we can find the low of that bar by using the I low function and providing the lowest bar number. So from 0, if the lowest bar number turns out to be 12, then current candle is 0. So look back 12 candles and go to the 12th candle and then get the low of that. And then we return that low back as long as the low is different from whatever is the current stored value in the range low. So it's a dynamic one. So as long as the range is valid, it will continue to calculate the range size and change the size of our range. So this is how we get the low. Now that we have the high and the low and we have the start time and the end time, now we can create the range visually on the chart. And this we do by creating a function and call it show range, and we're going to send to it the value of high and the value of low. And then inside we're going to say, well, create an object, a rectangle, and the start time of that will be equal to a start time that we have converted here, the time start. The value of the high of that rectangle is going to be the high, which we're going to send to this function, which is going to be our range high. Then the time end is going to be the time end that we have converted here. And the bottom of the rectangle is going to be the low value that we're going to send here, which is going to be the low of the range. Then we need to check whether or not the range is within the parameter that the user has defined for the minimum value and the maximum value of the range. In our case, we had put 15 and 30. So what we're saying here is that if the range size is less than the max range size and is bigger than the minimum range size, and then within that range, change the color to the range color. So when the range is valid, the user has defined the color to be beige, and when the range is disabled, the color is to be red. And this is what we're doing here. So if it is within the range, then color is range color, else it's outside of the range, which means it's outside of the range provided by the user as a valid range. So then the range color is to the range color disabled, whatever the user has selected. Then we create a box, which is the box here between the end time and the end of the day closing. So we're going to need this line at the closing, but we also need this box here. And that's the one that we are creating here as a rectangle, which starts at end time and ends at closing time of the day with the high and low. And we only put the color of the lines and we don't fill it with the range color. And then at the end, I want to put an object line, vertical line, which is going to be at time close. And we also color it to the range color. So this is what it's going to look like. Then the next function we're going to create is to check whether we are inside the time. So we start with MQL datetime format, start and now. And we have an integer that we're creating here as start minute and now minute. And then again, we do exactly the same thing as we did in converting the time, which we take the current time and we store that time into the now datetime format, but MQL datetime format. So now we can split it. So now we can say, well, now minute is equal to whatever is the now hour times 60 and now minutes added to it. So for example, if the time now is 2:45 in the morning, then the now minutes are going to be now hour, which is 2 multiplied by 60, so 120, and 45 minutes added to it, so 165 minutes. So 165 minutes from the start of the day. And then we do the same thing for the time start. So when does our range start? We convert it into a start minute as well by starting, okay, well, if the user had said to start the range at 3 o'clock, then we say 3 as the hours multiplied by 60, so 180, plus 0 minutes is 180. So now what we have is from the beginning of the day, we now know how many minutes have passed and how many minutes before the user says the range needs to start. So now we can check by saying if now minutes is bigger than the start minute, then we know that we are inside the range. So we return a true, otherwise we return a false. Let's compile it to see if we have any errors. And so far we do not have any errors. Then we go on and we create our next function, which is going to be the preparation of the order. And I'll make the screen a little smaller. I hope you can still see it. I'll try to zoom it on the screen so that it's visible. but I want to show it all in one place. And this is where we're going to prepare the orders. So if the time current is bigger than the end time of the range, so the range has finished, and the current time is smaller than the close of the day. So now we are in the period where the range has developed, and now we can trade before the end of the day. We get the value of the current price by getting the ask value. And then we start checking that if the range is bigger than the minimum range size, converting it to points and do the right decimal figure, and the range size is less than the maximum range size allowed by the user, again converting it to points and the right decimal figure. So we check that we are within that range, the range is not outside of those parameters. Then we check if the ask, the current price, is less than the high of the range minus the order distance point, and is bigger than the low of the range plus the order distance point. Because if this is the range, we don't want to place the order when the price is just 1 pip below or 2 pip below the order point, and same for the low. And then the next thing we're going to check is what's the trading style. Are we trading with the break or opposite to the break? Because if it is with the break, then we need to place buy stop and sell stop. And if it is opposite to the break, then we need to place buy limit and sell limit. So if it is 0, so we're trading with the break, then in that case, we're going to be sending buy stop and sell stop. So then we check that if the buy totals is less than 0, that there is currently no order sitting already and there is no position open. And then we're going to write these functions later. But if the buy is allowed by the moving average and the Ichimoku filter, then we send the buy stop at the range price at the top, and the stop loss is going to be whatever is the range price at the high, because that's where the order is, minus whatever is the range size multiplied by the stop loss percentage, because that's what the user is going to define as the stop loss. The opposite for the sell, so put it on the range low, and the stop loss is going to be wherever is the low of the range, because the stop loss is going to be above where we place the order. So range size times the stop loss percent, add it to the low so that we have the stop loss above. And if the trading style is 1, which means that we are going opposite to the break, then we need to place buy limit and sell limit. And this is what we do here. So we place a buy limit at the low of the range, so that when the price comes back and hit the low, we take a buy. And now the stop loss is going to be at the low minus whatever is the range size times the stop loss percent. And in case of a sell, we're placing a sell limit at the top plus whatever is the range size times the stop loss percentage that the user has defined. So this is how we prepare the orders. This is the entire function on one screen. And then we write the function where we're actually going to open the trade. So we're going to send to this function what's the order type going to be. So whether it's sell limit, buy limit, sell stop, or buy stop, what will be the price and what will be the stop loss. And then we're going to define the TP by adding to the price, the stop loss. And then we're going to start with a lot size of 0.01 as a default. But then we're going to check what is the stop loss type that the user has defined, whether it's fixed or whether it's risk percentage. If it is fixed, which is the case 0, here, fixed equals 0 and risk percentage equals 1. So we're going to loop through the lot size type variable. And then if the case is 0, that means it's fixed. So then in that case, the lots is going to be fixed lot size, what the user has defined, and will break. So we don't run this. But if it is not 0, then go to the next one and it's 1. And if it is 1, then calculate the lot size by providing the value of price minus the stop loss. Now that we have everything, then we can open up the trade by saying trade.openOrder by providing the symbol. The type is going to come from here. The lots are going to come from here. The price is going to come from here. The stop loss is going to come from here. The TP we are creating here. And then the trade comment is whatever is the trade comment that the user provides. And I'm putting the function as if it's not trade.order, meaning try to open the order, but if you're unsuccessful, then print that message. And then at the end of the day, when the time for the trading has finished, defined by the user, we're going to close everything and reset. We're going to loop through all of the positions which are currently open. We're going to get the ticket number. And then if the position symbol equals our symbol on the chart and the info magic number equals our magic number, then it's our trade on our chart. Then just simply close it. And similarly, if there are any orders pending, then we're going to loop through the orders and do exactly the same thing. but this time deleting the order by providing the ticket number. And then the bars range is start variable that we used here to get the highs and the lows. We're going to reset it to 0 so that the next day the range can be calculated again. And we're going to set the buy total and the sell total to 0 as well, so that the next day the EA starts with a 0 and it can open trades. After this, the last function that we're going to require before we get to the filters is the trailing stop. So let's start looping through all of the open positions by creating a for loop. We loop through all of the positions by saying I equals positions total minus 1, because I will start at 0. So if there are 3 positions, it will be 0, 1, and 2. So we say positions total minus 1. As long as it's bigger than and equal to 0, run these codes here, run these iterations, every time reducing the value of I by 1. So if there are 3 positions open, start at 2, then go 1, and then go 0 for the value of I. Then we start by selecting the position by index. So whatever index you are at, 3, 2, 1, 0, select the order, select the position, and then gets its magic number and store it into magic, get its ticket number, store it in ticket, gets its position type, whether it's buy or sell, store it into a position type variable, pos type, and get its symbol value and store it into symbol. Then if the symbol value that we got from the position selected equals to the current symbol and the magic number that we got here equals to input magic number, so our magic number, that means it's our trade. Then get the value of the market price currently by using either the bid or the ask. Get the stop loss information of the position, get the TP value of the position, then the open price of the position, then define 2 more variables as high and low, and find the high and find the low, because we're going to need it in case if the user has selected to trail the stop loss by the market highs and lows. Get the high and the low by triggering these find high and find low functions that we defined here to find the highs and lows in the market. And then we're going to run through the trailing types. We ask the user to define whether he wants to trail, and if he wants to trail, then what's the type of the trail. And there were 3 types that we provided as an option, as a risk percentage, high, low, and fixed pips, 0, 1, or 2. So now we need to loop through these and go, if it is 0, meaning it is a percentage of the range, then we check whether it's a position type buy or it's a position type sell. That value comes from here, position type. If it's buy, or is it buy or is it sell? If it is buy, then if the price has moved above whatever is the price open price, this one, and the price minus whatever is the range size is bigger than the current stop loss of the position, meaning the price has moved up, it's above the open price, and it has moved so much that it's bigger than whatever is the percentage, meaning if it's 30 pips to trail, it's now 31. If it's bigger than the current stop loss, then set the stop loss to price minus whatever the user has defined as the range size minus the trail range percentage. And then modify the trade position by using trade.modify, giving it the ticket number and providing the SL and TP value. The TP value remains the same. We don't change that. And then look if it is sell type. And if it is sell type, then we need to check that if the current price has moved below the open price, so it's in profit, it's a sell position. And then if the price plus the range size is smaller than whatever is the SL price, whatever is the current stop loss, then change the stop loss to whatever is the price plus whatever the user has defined as a percentage of the range size, and modify the position. Then if the trail type is 1, which means find the last high and low in the market and trail it by that, then again we need to check whether it's a buy position or a sell position. If it's a buy position, then we check that the price has moved above the open price and that the low is not 0. Because if it's 0, that means it's an error. If it is above the open price and the low is not 0, then we need to change the stop loss to whatever is the low minus whatever is the buffer that the user has provided in pips, convert it to points, and change it to the right decimal values. because we want to trail it by whatever is the low minus a certain buffer that the user has defined. So 2 pips, 3 pips below the low. So we change the stop loss to that. And then if a stop loss is bigger than the position's in-force current stop loss, because we only want to trail it upwards and never go down. If it's bigger than the current stop loss of the position, then change the stop loss by providing the ticket value, stop loss value, and the TP value. The reverse for the sell. So if the position type is sell, then again check if the price has come below the open price and the high is bigger than 0, so it's not an error. Then change the stop loss to whatever is the high in the market plus whatever buffer the user wants to leave. And then if the stop loss is smaller than whatever was the stop loss before, because we don't ever want the stop loss to go backwards, we only want it to trail downwards, and then change the position, the stop loss, by sending a position modify. And then for the third type, which is the fixed, then in that case, we're checking that the position type is buy or sell. And if the price has come above the open price of that position, then just change the stop loss to whatever is the fixed stop loss, converting it into points, because we are collecting it in pips. So we convert it into points and convert it into the right decimal. And then if the stop loss is bigger than whatever was the last stop loss of the position, because we only want to trail it upwards, modify the position. Then the reverse for sell, which is check that the price is below the opening price of the position. We don't need this. Check that the price is below the opening price, and then change the stop loss to whatever is the price in the market currently, plus, because it's a sell order, plus whatever is the fixed stop loss in pips. Change it into points and convert it into right decimals. And then if the new stop loss is smaller than whatever is the current stop loss of the position, because we only want to trail downward, modify the position. Now here is the entire trail stop loss. I unfortunately cannot fit it on one screen, but this is where all of these parentheses opening and closing is extremely important. So I'll show it screen by screen. So here is the beginning of the trail stop loss. And this. And the trail stop loss type 1. And the trail stop loss type 2 until the end. This one, you might want to pause it and code it properly with all the brackets and the parentheses opening and closing at exactly the point that you see on the screen. Then the last thing we check is for trading size, because we provided our users the ability to select whether he wants to trade one-sided or both-sided. One-sided being 0 and both-sided being 1. So if he has chosen to trade both-sided, then we just simply return, we don't need to do anything. But if he has chosen it to be one-sided only, then in the beginning, the EA is going to put 2 orders, but once one of them is triggered, the other one needs to be deleted. And this we do by creating an open position variable and then looping through the positions total, selecting by index, and then checking whether the symbol of the position equals our symbol and the magic number of the position matches our magic number. Then in that case, we know that there is an open position. And if the positions total is greater than 0 and the open positions is greater than 0, meaning there are open positions on the server and they are our open positions, then we loop through the orders, select the order, get its ticket number, and then if the order info symbol is our symbol and the magic number is our magic number, so it's our other order which needs to be deleted, then we delete that order. You can simplify it as well by just removing this and removing this, because we don't care whether it's a position type which has open is buy or sell. We only want to know whether the position which has been open is carrying our symbol and is carrying our magic number. Now if I compile, I don't have any errors. And this concludes our functions. Before we start writing the functions for the filters, but let's go now to the OnTick function and start writing our codes. So here we come, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check whether it's a new bar by saying if it's not a new bar, return. So if it's not a new bar, don't do anything below, just exit the function and leave. So everything here above this line is going to be run on every tick. Everything below this line is going to be run only when there is a new candle. We're only interested in once there is a new candle. So we're only going to write the codes below this line. The first thing we're going to do is check for the trading sides, whether it's one-sided or two-sided. And if it is one-sided, then delete the orders if there is a position already open. Then we check for the open orders and open positions, the function that we created. So get how many positions are open currently. Then if the stop loss trailing is 0, meaning yes, and the buy total or the sell total is bigger than 0, so there is an open position currently, then we need to trigger the trailing stop loss function that we have just written. Then we convert the times. So we get the start time, the end time, and the closing time and convert it into the right formats. Then we check if it is inside time by triggering that function that we have written. And then if it is inside time, then we set the high of the range, the low of the range, and the size of the range by triggering the get high function that we wrote, the get low function that we wrote, getting the value of the high of the range and the low of the range, and then the range size becomes one minus the other. And then trigger the show range function to actually draw the range on the chart. And this is the power of the function. So once you have created all the functions separately, you can just simply call them here. And then we call the prepare order, which will trigger the prepare order function. And if it is an order to be sent, then it will call the open trade function, which is the next function to actually open the trade as well. So it's calling two functions at once. By calling this function prepare order, we're also calling the open trade function from within that. And then this function is also going to be triggered and the trade will be open. And then at the end of the day, what we want is to close all of the orders and reset everything. So we're going to check that if the current time has become bigger than the closing time, then just close and reset all by calling the function close and reset all. This function. Let's compile, and we have 0 errors. And this concludes our EA without the filters. So now this will work, but without the filters. And the way I'm doing this video is if you want to stop here, you can stop here as well if you don't want to apply the filters. But if you do want to apply the filters, then we need to create 3 more functions and then update them here. So if you're interested in the filters as well, we go back again to the bottom where we're going to create the functions for the filters. The first function we're going to create is the isNews. Is it there an upcoming news function? And we're creating it as a bool, so we're going to only get back a value of whether or not there is an upcoming news. So if the news filter is false, then just simply return. Just exit the function because the user does not want to apply this filter. But if he does, then we get the MQL date time. So in the format where you can break down the hours and days and minutes, we create 2 variables, now and the news time. Then we start with the separator and we switch the separator by going through the cases. So if the case is 0, then the user has selected comma. And if the case is 1, then the user has selected colon as the separator. And then we get the code for that because MQL does not understand comma or colon. It understands the code behind, whether it's 2493, 5412, whatever it is. So we get that code by saying string get character, providing the value of whatever is the separator, and asking for the character to be returned and stored into the sep code variable. Then we split the string of the key news where the user has provided all of the news that he wants separated by comma or semicolon, and we split it by using the separator code. And we store the value into the variable that we created as an array as news to avoid in the global section. And this function also returns the value of how many strings was it able to split the entire thing into. So in this case, we're going to get the value of 9 that I want to store here. Then we start with creating an MQL calendar value variable, and I'm calling it values. Then we start with a date time. So what's the start time is going to be whatever is the time now. And what's the end time? The end time is whatever is the start time, so whatever is the time now, plus whatever the user has defined on how many days to look. And converting, because we're asking in number of days to look, we're converting it by using the period day 1 into period seconds, because this date time variable stores the values in seconds. So we need to convert it and add it into the start time. Then we get the value, all of the history of the calendar, and store it into this values variable that we have created, is starting at its start time and ending at its end time. Then For the array size of values, because here we have stored all of the calendar entries that came back from this function, so there is an array size of that. So run through that array size. So do the loop starting at 0, and as long as the value of I is less than the array size of that value, so you're running through that array size fully, increasing it by 1 every time. Create an event, get the ID of that event, and store it into this variable that we have created. Then get the country and store it into this country variable. And then we say if you try to find in the news currencies, if the currency of that news, you're not able to find it into the news currencies, which is the variable where we're storing the currencies, separated again by comma. If you're not able to find it, if you're not able to find in that news event the currency to be in our list of currencies, then just continue, meaning do the loop again. Take the next value of the calendar, because this value is not useful for us. And then if you do find it, then run through the loop of j, where j starts at 0 and runs through how many strings did we find here. Run through that loop, and on every one, you try to find the current event, which is the split value of that string that we have provided. So let's say NFP. Try to find the NFP into the current news, which is the event name. So whatever is the total name of that event, try to find it. If you cannot find it, then continue, meaning go to the next. But if you do find it, then it means that it is on our currency and it has the title of the news has our keyword in it, in which case comment it on the chart that the next news upcoming is on USD with the event name and what's the time of that news. Then we're going to take the current time and convert it into the format where you can split it by day, hour, and minute, and store it into this variable today that we created here as MQL datetime. Then we're going to take the news time as well and convert it into the same format of MQL datetime, so we can split it and store it into the MQL datetime variable news time. Now that these two are stored in that format, now we can check whether today's date, whatever is the day today, is equal to whatever is the news time day. So if the news time day is on the 11th of November and today is the 7th of November, then today the trading isn't to be disabled. But if it is the same day, then we want to change the background of the chart to when the trading is disabled, and also print that the trading is disabled today on symbol such and such due to the upcoming news such and such. And then we'll say news printed equals to true, and then just return true for this function, because that means that we have found an event which is going to happen today, so the trading needs to be disabled. And if not, if none of that happens, then just return false. And if none, then also return false. So this is the entire function. So this is the first part, and this is the second part, and this is the end. So pause the video and code it. All the brackets and curly brackets need to be completely in place. Let's compile to see if we have any error, and I don't have any error. Then we go to the moving average filter, and this one is a very simple one. We're going to return a value in a string, so as a text, because I only wanted to return whether the fast moving average is above or below the slow moving average. So we're going to create a double variable, slow moving average and fast moving average, and we're going to use the ICMarkets variable that we have created, moving average fast and moving average slow, and initialized it on the initialization function here. So we're going to get the value of the fast moving average and the slow moving average by just saying return the value of main on candle number 0, so current candle. And then if the fast moving average is above the slow moving average, I want to return the word above. And if the fast moving average is below the slow moving average, then I want to return the word below. And if neither, then just return the word error. And in the same way, we're going to do ICMarkets, but we need to go through the loop of all of the options that we provided our user. So I'm going to start by creating these 5 variables and storing the value by calling on the ICMarkets variable that we created and initialize in the initialization function, and getting the Senko span A value, B value, Tenkan-sen value, Kijun-sen value for the candle 0, so for the current candle. And then I'm getting the market price by getting the ask price or the bid price. It wouldn't really make any difference. And then I run through the different options. So if the user has selected 0, which is above the cloud, then I need to check if the ask is above the send to spend A and also above the send to spend B, then return above. Then if the ask, which is the market price, if it's below the send to spend A and send to spend B, that means it's below the cloud, so return below. Then if the filter type is 1, which is if the price is above 10 consent line, so I'm checking if the ask is above 10 consent or ask is below 10 consent and returning above and below, and so on and so forth. So for Kijun Sen, so for send to spend A, send to spend B, then the value 5 in that drop down was if 10 consent is above the Kijun Sen line, then in that case I'm checking for 10 consent above Kijun Sen is above, below, and so on and so forth. So we go back to the OnTick function so that now we can apply these filters. So the first thing I'm going to do on every candle is refresh the value of the Ichimoku filter and the moving average filter by saying ichimoku.refresh or fast moving average and slow moving average.refresh, but only if the filter is on, because if it's not on, then I don't want to do. I don't need to refresh the values. Then I can put here if is upcoming news, then return, because if there is an upcoming news today, then we don't want to do anything. We just want to return. So don't run all of the codes below, just exit the function from here until the next time when there is no news. And then we need to modify our open trade function to now look at the filters as well. So the first thing I'm going to check here that if the MA filter is true and the MA buy on is true, which is the default value, then if the order type is buy limit or the order type is buy stop, but the fast moving average is actually below because that's what the function is going to return, then we don't want to buy. So in that case, we turn the MA buy on filter to false and just return. And then if the MA filter is true and the sell on is true, which is the default value for the start of the day, then if the order type is sell limit or sell is stop, which is we're going for a sell, but the fast moving average is above the slow moving average because that's what this function is going to return, then in that case, we also turn the MA sell on to false and return. Exit the function. So in that case, all of these codes are not going to be run. And then we do the same thing for Ichimoku, where we check that if the Ichimoku filter is true and the buy on is true, which is going to be the default value, but then if the type of the order we are sending is either buy limit or buy stop, so we're sending buy orders, but the function where we're checking whether or not the price is above or below our parameter, whether it's price above Kijun Sen line, 10 consent above Kijun Sen, whatever is our option, if it returns below, then we're not interested in buying. So then in that case, we're going to turn the MA filter to buy on false and we're going to return. So this trading operation is not going to happen because the EA is going to exit the function from here. And then if the Ichimoku filter was true and the sell on was also true, which is the default value, but then if it was a type sell, but the price was actually, or whatever is the criteria for Ichimoku, if it's returning the value above, then we're not interested in selling. So in that case, we turn the sell on to false and we exit the function. So these are not going to be run and no trade is going to be placed. So now that we have turned these to false, all of these values which started as true at the beginning of the day, then at the end of the day, which is the function close everything and reset, we also need to reset these values back again to true so that the next day EA can check again. And then also for the news filter, we need to change the value of the news printed to false so that the EA can again print tomorrow, and also change the chart color back again to the original color, which was black. Because here we said that if it's not printed news, meaning the news printed variable is false, then only print this. So we need to reset it back to false so that when the next time the news event is going to happen on the same day as the trading day, then we can print the message again. So if I compile now, I don't have any errors, and this concludes all of our coding for the EA with the filters. Now I will be looking through the comment section for any suggestions of any additional filters or any other variation that you want to add. And in case if there are enough good suggestions that I can make another video with 3 or 4 modifications, then I'll come back and I'll update how those modifications can be made. And in case if you are buying this code from the store, I will add the new suggestions and the coding of that into that store workbook as well, so that you can download it again. So until next time, guys, stay safe, trade safe.